So different spiritual traditions, which later become religions, some of them, uh, various teachings, they are a map, let's say a map to go to the top of the mountain, let's say. And it's different maps, and there are different ways to go to the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain being, um, anyway, different how it's called, kingdom of heaven, or salvation, or inner peace, or enlightenment, or liberation, or whatever. And we can and then not one map or one pathway doesn't work for everybody. So some people have different configuration. Some are more intellectually inclined, more dry. Some are more emotional, uh, devotional type, more wet, and some are more like physical, instinctive, more physical. And so that's why throughout the, let's say, history of spirituality, um, different maps and teachings have formed, um, and they morphed due to also the culture and, languages. And initially people were more less mental and more simple. Then later people became much more sophisticated and mental. In the past, some were more into God. More recent times, people are like, this is a trigger word, God. So um, and so these paths, they say, could be look at it, different flavors. And I'm mentioning all this because in this circle, and also in this age, internet and all that, we got like a mixture of many of them, and the circle uses uh, um, from various paths, tools, and maps. Um, so the one style of path is called like the devotional path, which appeared in some Christianity, or in some Indian or Sufi, or where basically the seeker, the devotee, is the vehicle is like love of God, and love and devotion towards uh, um, towards God, or towards a saint, or towards a um, like Kuan Yin or Krishna, or towards the Guru. Uh, so that will be the devotional path, where through this complete kind of trying to attain a union with that, um, and through not so much intellectual processing or stuff, it's more like through kind of staying with that power of devotion. That's the bhakti, it's called the emotional devotional path. That, you can see in these Rumi poems and Hafiz and mystical Christianity and stuff like that. It's very present. I'm not into that, but I respect it. Um, there is the Jnani path, or the path of knowledge, which is to some degree the fourth way, and the direct path, and even this David Hawkins stuff, uh, and a lot of what to do with me here bringing is connected to this the path of knowledge. And it's somehow it's knowledge, and it is Jnani is like knowledge is more like wisdom, the path of wisdom. So it's knowledge about the truth, knowledge of the truth, and where that's usually involving study of inner stuff, study of theories, or exploration of the self and consciousness, stuff like that. So all this non-duality, Advaita Vedanta, fourth way, will be more like a path of knowledge. Ultimately, they meet because even the path of knowledge, the devotee needs to be devoted to the path of knowledge. So there's love of that. So still the driver is the heart. You know. And then ultimately for the bhakti path, the path of devotion, for that to work, the devotee will need to get knowledge of the truth, experiential knowledge of the truth. They say, and it's more common now, the path of devotion in our age, because of how people are. Some shortcoming with the path of devotion is that one can end up often into this trap of that me as a personal devotee trying to reach God. So it's always this carrot, this ultimate carrot is trying to be reached, and it seems to be outside of oneself. And then usually in that path, people have mysterious mystical states where they feel bliss and like extreme love, and then basically, oh yeah, beloved is here, union, and then it's gone. It's like, oh, you left me, and then so it's like that. It's kind of torturous, you know. Okay. There's also, you know, in the yogic, there was this karma yoga or raja yoga, which is the path of action, where through good behavior and good deeds and selfless action, one will reach the path, the mountain. So, now on the Jnani path, path of knowledge, and more intellectual, which is more like what we are exploring here. Also, there is this, we talked this before, there is this progressive path and direct path. The progressive path is more known, and it's basically, and I bring this because it's connected to the scale of consciousness. The progressive path, and actually David Hawkins, he called his teaching like the radical devotional non-duality, which was interesting. So you're dedicating to the experience of truth, radical devotional non-duality. Anyway, on the progressive path, the idea is that the teaching addresses the ego and says, dude, you got all this stuff that you need to work out, to let go, to release all these patterns and all these habits and all this negative emotion and all these identifications. And the idea on the progressive path is that, which corresponds, I mean, anyway, is that like the what we are is the self, and it is already there, whether we are, even if we are not aware of it. And what blocks us is that this accumulation of lots of negative habits, negative thoughts, negative energy fields that are conscious and subconscious. And those are clouds that prevent the experience of the sun. And on the progressive path, the idea is to start digging and kind of becoming aware of this obstacle, and then releasing it, dissolving it, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one, until as they are less, they're thinning out the clouds, one can have more experiences of our true nature, and then some more stuff come up, and so the focus is on letting go and renouncing, releasing, unprogramming these programs, limiting beliefs, feelings, lower energy fields. The direct path, and in this particular group, with other stuff I'm doing, I don't so much go into direct path because that's doesn't seem very useful. But in this group, there is much more element of direct path, which is basically the idea is that, well, forget about all this shit at this point. Forget about it. Yes, there is shit, but who are you? Who am I? Who am I? Who am I that is aware of the shit? What is aware? So going from the first step towards the last step, and instead of trying to work this or that, we are having certain meditation or self-inquiry or various, all the methods are meant to somehow quiet the mind a little bit, and then we go straight for knowing what we are as a true identity. And so, Muji, Rupert Spira, Francis, Lucille, Laura, Lucille, they are kind of like that. And then they say that this is the direct path because it goes straight for the prize, and tells from the start, hey, you are not all this stuff, and you are that. And then the theory is that as we start to have experiential glimpses of what we are, even if we haven't been on the path for a long, long time, apparently they say that the direct path is for not for many people, but the people who resonate with it, then it's like, I don't know, due to past work in other lifetimes or this lifetime or whatever, they are ready. So then that makes sense. And then so through keeping visiting often and accessing knowingly what we are, that is like burns out a lot of these patterns and limitations and feelings. They are kind of diminishing by themselves. We are not trying to work on them so they diminish. We just keep going straight for the self. And in this process, of course, the shit will still come up. So it's like you still need to let go of the shit, but we are not focusing on the shit, and they are dissolving gradually. Yeah, so anything to do with self-inquiry and what I mentioned is the direct path, and I bring more elements of that in this circle, and this is what I'm doing with myself. Now, David Hawkins, he was great in a way that he himself had the experience of the self and all that, but due to his own particular path and to like extensive psychiatrical, clinical experience, and then just in order to make it more available for everybody, he kind of made a combination of direct path and progressive gradual, and which I find useful, actually, very useful. So basically coming back to the scale of consciousness, and you can pull it out if you want, you don't have to. I want to speak about it a little bit, is that apparently like he was already very high level, and then after he went to some kinesiological workshop, and they were doing kinesiology muscle testing, and then he witnessed from his current level of being what was happening. He realized, oh my God, This is so many applications. When he noticed that our energy meridians and our aura, our energy meridians, and like that, they respond. So when our energy field is in touch with something that is true, it strengthens and is strong. And whenever it's exposed to something that is false and negative, it weakens. At the level of white sugar, pesticide, apple, versus organic apple. Basically, the body responds whether if you know it or not, it's organic or not. Something knows. So we have somehow within us some kind of, we have the self, which is the truth, and anything that is not aligned with that coming our way, it's kind of weakening. Or anything that is within us that is not aligned with that, it blows our energy meridians. So anyway, I'll cut a long story short. He researched, and then he and he realized that consciousness or life manifests through all beings. Let's say focusing now on this planet, and then consciousness expresses itself in various degrees of intelligence in all creatures, um, and and let's say forget about the creatures and now coming back to humans. Um, he realized that here it's like some kind of interesting domains, more like a purgatory. It's not heaven and it's not hell. It's a purgatory because you can have, in terms of human consciousness, what I mean, it's all the same consciousness, but it's their frequency, which people are, can be from like very low levels of hell to a very high level of like Jesus and Buddha and stuff like that. And then so he came up with this, that uh, um, he was able to kind of track what are those levels of gradual levels of consciousness from the lowest level up to the level of highest potential being, like highest people that walk the earth, like Jesus, Buddha, or other Krishna, other people like that. And so he made a scale from 1 to 1,000, and then the scale was logarithmic, so it wasn't like mathematical. So from one number to another, it's a big difference. And basically, he realized that anything that is below, and he put some numbers on it. Of course, God doesn't have numbers, but he kind of put some numbers on it so to help to understand better the scale. And so what is below 200, it is there are levels of everything is below 200 is not supportive of life, and it is creates unhappiness, and ultimately creates sickness, disease, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And then there's a scale from like really the darkest kind of states to the highest states. And then what is below 200 is negative and harmful. And then from 200, there's a level of like the truth and neutrality, where things are more pro-life. And then things gradually increase. 300, some kind of emotional development, some basic emotional health and truthful development of willingness, acceptance, things like that. In the level of 400, it's more like the intellect, which is responsible for building civilization and all that. But then, but it's a blockage in itself, and then from after 499, there's level 500, which is the level, what they call level of love. And from these teachings, basically, or awakening starts, let's say, from 500. And love not as a feeling, but love as an attitude of being benevolent and of goodwill towards all life, including oneself. an attitude of kindness, supportiveness, lovingness towards all things, including oneself. And now from, however, like level from 500, it's, I mean, you know, you can hear me, you can check this later. Um, the early stages of 500, it's more like it's lovingness, and it's highly you know, nice and peaceful. However, if something bad happens or some really bad person comes across our way, then we can't sustain it. So only from level 540, it's called the level of unconditional love, where somehow no matter what's happening and no matter who you're dealing with, it doesn't change our attitude towards that. So there's an attitude that there's an energy field of unconditional love, even if the guy is an asshole, or even if the guy is killing people, you don't hate his guts. I mean, of course, you can kill him, or you are, you know, because it's detrimental to life. Some serial killer or something, you know, one can be okay with them being taken out, but you are not nasty towards them, or there's understanding. There's some level of, you know, feeling understanding. 540. And then they say that actually from level 500, and especially from level of 540, now there's a level where healing happens, and you know, groups like 12-step group or AA or stuff like that, they are aligned with a level of this unconditional love, where anybody who comes and stays plugged to that field can transcend lower level of energy field. And on the scale, from 540 towards high 500s, there are this kind of this intensity of lovingness increases, so it goes more like into mystical states and blissful states, and more like the level of the saint. And then at 600, there's another another distinct level, just like there's below 200. Is there something from below 200? From 200 is a big jump. And then from 499 to 500 is another big jump, and then 600 is supposed to be the level of enlightenment, where now that quality of more like wetness quality of consciousness kind of gets more dry without being unloving, but then it goes into kind of peace, serenity, and less wet. And then, so according to the scale, from 600 is enlightenment, liberation, freedom. And then anything above 600 to 1000, they're just different levels of enlightenment. They're all complete in themselves. And then, yeah, the idea is that, let's say one person in 500, according to Hawkins, it counteracts the negativity of tens of thousands of people on the planet. So the energy field, the level of consciousness of humanity is the collective accumulated level of consciousness of everybody. And then apparently, according to Hawkins, only in about 1990, the level of humanity for the first time ever jumped about 200 and became more like 2 or 4, which is pretty low. But like before, it was below 200. During the time of Jesus was like kind of 100, which is really low. So that's why, you know, God or the Absolute sends these bombs of truth here to raise the level, you know, but it's very slow for millennia. Mm-hmm. And the reason why so much fucked up shit is happening even now is that like a large, high amount of the population is below 200. Anyway, the idea is that, according to Hawkins, is that also somebody in the 540 counterbalances negativity of hundreds of thousands of millions of people, and some handful of people in 600 and above can counteract the negativity of all humanity. So that's why nobody pushed the red button yet or something. You know, just because some sage somewhere in a cave doesn't meet anybody, but just having his presence there, it is like it counteracts immense negativity. And then, you know, the idea was that some of these enlightened people above 600, I mean, the idea that anybody above 500 is a blessing to humanity. And then usually we like them and we feel comfortable about them, and they are like, it's nice to be around them. And anybody 540 and above, it's even more. And then usually people like that have impact, beneficial impact around people just by being. That's why Hawkins was saying, hey, if you want to change the world, please don't go out, don't do marches, don't go to protests, just do your work. And then you change your own level of consciousness. And basically the way you lift the level of consciousness of humanity is not by, let's say, not lifting the ships one by one, is by the whole level of the water lifts, and then all the ships go up. So yeah, and then some of these people that are above 600, some of them, according to Hawkins, you know, I mean, I'm just sharing this condensed version of a lot of his talks. So take it with don't believe what I'm saying. Just be open and check for yourself. So some of them apparently, when people reach 600, they are presented with the option, hey, dude, if you want to stop right now. So you leave the body, and some people, they stay, and other people, they stay. They some of them, they are teaching something or doing something, and some they don't. So you know, it's a different path. Doesn't matter whether they teach or not teach. And then now the higher level of consciousness of the teacher, the more it can impact more globally humanity. So that's why some of the people who started religion, I mean, they didn't start religions. The religion started after them. You know? And anyway, Hawkins had this whole calibration that he calibrated many teachers and all that, you know, like. So, you know, people like Mother Teresa, Ramana Maharishi, Nisargadatta Maharaj, people like Thich Nhat Hanh, all kind of people from the past. So he did a lot of these tests and all that I'm not so into, but it made sense. So now for practical purposes for us is that wherever we are, and this is from the perspective of a progressive path, is that we are where we are at is a collection of all our thoughts and feelings, and all our energy fields present within us. Some there's this you know, connected to trauma and feeling like a victim, and feeling like unworthy, and feeling deep grief or deep resentment, which are below 200, and together with our loving attitudes and our higher meditation states, so we can have, you know, we can have things in 500, 600, we can have things in 200, you know, under 200 throughout the day. And our overall is a medium of all that. And then he was saying that for people who are not on spirituality, a spiritual path, the level of consciousness doesn't change much from one life to another. It's more like 5-10 points maximum, just through, you know, you can probably observe with parents or stuff that they you know, they get a little bit better after like 50 years of shit, but not much better. You know what I mean? However, for people who are you know, on the path, that's a great blessing, and somehow I don't know why we have this luck, or we value it, or whatever, but like doing intentional work, one can change one's level of consciousness hundreds of points in a lifetime. So it's a big opportunity. And so the book that I offered there, the Letting Go, basically he goes into each level, and then he explains how to transcend, what keeps in place. So now if we go into, so for practical purposes, it is important like this for us in this group, is to clean up anything to do below 200 within ourselves, to clean it up and let go and diminish that. This can happen either through focusing on that or through self-inquiry. But we are doing both here. And then to be in integrity all the time. And then we are already in America, is more like culture. I mean, this overall is this 400, so it's the intellect. We don't have a problem with that. We are all kind of intellectual. But to clean up the shit, have integrity and be as truthful as possible and authentic and spontaneous, and develop this lovingness, having an attitude of benevolence towards all life, including oneself. And then this meditation and this self-inquiry and stuff like that, they aim to go further. And what's interesting about the map, when you have a look at it now after we talk like this, is that at each level of consciousness, the level of consciousness is like a paradigm. It's like it's an altitude. Like imagine you have like a ecosystem. In a certain level, you have certain type of animals, a certain type of light, certain type of minerals in the ground, and certain type of vegetation. Now, if you change that level to another altitude, you have different animals, different light, different minerals, different air quality, different like this. So basically, these are like the calibrated levels of consciousness are, as he called it, energy fields with which our consciousness resonates with, and then it pulls it there. It's like a station, and then when our consciousness is resonating with certain frequency, then we have a certain type of thoughts and certain type of feelings and certain type of reactions, and we have a certain type of attitude towards the people and towards God and towards ourselves. The level changes, then you have different thoughts, different feelings, different self-view, God view, world view. So that's interesting. So that's why, you probably meet some people, you explain to them certain things. It doesn't work, because there are certain level where it is like that. They can't see something else, and that's why it is like that. It can't. And then from our point of view, we're like, we can't see, how can they see it like that? They can see it all, it's not true, but it is, it's like each levels are like some kind of stations. And so the map of consciousness was more like to have some map, actually, where to work on. So, for instance, also like lower levels. So the lower the level is, closer towards death and apathy, shame, guilt. So let's say like level 20, 50, it's the life view is hopeless or evil or miserable. The level of apathy, guilt, and shame. The emotion is despair, blame, humiliation. Process involved is destruction, elimination, or abdication. God view, how a person at that level views God would be, it's a condemning God, a vindictive God, or despising God, And sometimes some parts of the New Testament, they are actually a very low level, because they present this very vindictive, jealous, mean, nasty, kind of controlling God, which is man-created. Now, when we go to also this, now focusing on below 200, And what's interesting is that this scale of consciousness, I found it in other teachers and other teachings that didn't have anything to do with Hawkins. Like if you guys are familiar with the law of attraction and Abraham Hicks, they are kind of, I was very surprised that they had the same thing, and saying how basically you can't go from apathy or to fear into kind of gratitude. So each progressive level of what's below 200, although it's negative, it's a little more options there. There's a little more energy, you know. So guilt and apathy, it's more like you are fucked, basically. Now grief is more intense. It's still very, very painful, but there are more options there. And then fear, you know, there is much more energy in fear than in apathy. And then desire, now there's like, oh yeah, now you want something, wanting and desire and addiction and going for it, and I'm going to get it, I'm going to get that thing, it's going to be okay, it's not going to be okay, but I'm going to go and get it. So there's more energy than anger. Anger is already, oh man, we're going to do this, you know, fuck them. And so, you know, the highest level of negative energy field is like pride, which is so it's here you can have people that are seemingly doing good and, hey man, I've done all these things, look at me, I'm so good, I'm so better than you guys. And then pride. So now let's say going towards 500, like God view is that God is loving being. Life view is benign, you're benign. Level of love, emotion reverence, process revelation. In a level of 600, God view is that there is one, only one, life view complete. No, peace, bliss, illumination. So, also anything to do with, that's why all this stuff, when we talk about the deficiency identity, you know, all this deficiency identity is that there is something wrong with me, I'm bad. So all this, it saps the energy field. And so it short circuits our energy meridians. So, and they create negative thoughts, create negative feelings. Then sooner or later you have diseases. So that's why there's this thing of somatization, having chewed on lots of negative thoughts and feelings for a long time, so I get sick, you know, because it's from this point of view, it's all one thing, you know, spirit, mental, emotional, body is just one thing. It's more like conceptually we differentiate, but so, and in the other book that I sent, the one with healing and recovery, Hawkins goes into also a lot of how to healing the physical body, and just by releasing a lot of these negative programs, guilt, shame, resentment, frustration, irritation, hatred, all this, then gradually, then the body can heal, you know.
Is there a process for all that?
Well, the book, the yellow book that I sent as audio, actually he goes from the lowest and explains, he doesn't go on the direct path style, like, hey man, forget it, there's no who you are, who are you, what is aware of that. That's not going to work for somebody below 200 at all. It's not going to work at all. Right. So it's more like, hey, what keeps it in place? What's the distortion? What's the underpinnings that keeps this attitude, and what you need to realize? And then you move to the next one. And then what keeps that in place and what you need to realize and move to the next one. So the book goes in each level, okay. The letting go.
All right. So it's not like a worksheet or a work process. It's more your own self-work on each one of the...
Yeah, it's not a worksheet, but he takes every negative feeling that are stations and explains he describes it anatomically and the whole fauna and flora at that level, and what needs to happen to go to the next level to transcend that, kind of like stuck in guilt, or stuck in lack of acceptance, or stuck in indignation, or stuck in grief, or stuck in pride, or stuck in wantingness, you know. So for people who are coming here, you guys are already not so much affected by those things, but we all have residuals of such things. So it's good to to expose to that. I have all kind of, there's all this level of desire, wanting, we are dealing with, and the level of addiction or level of stuck in grief and loss, and whatever people have, anger, indignation, righteousness. Anybody who has this more like active negative emotions, it's more like with righteousness, and they shouldn't be like this and all that. So all these are negative energy fields that are weak, and they are weakening us. And so yeah, I'll find some way to bring this up experientially, but I feel just this knowledge is and if you guys read it, you will understand better your past. You can understand your past better, where you went through and how you transcend this stuff, and you can understand people better. And the main thing I kind of got here was this thing from Hawkins, was this, to the path of the heart, to cultivate lovingness, not as a feeling, but as a way of being, as an alignment, to decide to have goodwill towards all life, everybody, no matter what. And then as we have this is a powerful intention, and then we'll have stuff come up which is not aligned with this, and then we need to investigate that and let go of that, and then it becomes more like normal, so we don't hate some president, or we don't hate anybody. It doesn't mean that we have to condone them and all that, and it doesn't mean that some people cannot be killed,
You have to be a vegan, right?
What?
Or you have to be a vegan.
Yeah, yeah.
Kill things. Okay.
So I think I'll